This conference will now be recorded.
All right, perfect. Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you everybody for being here. As always, this class will be sent out and be available about an hour after we finish. So we've been working with Greenworks for probably about 6 years, and I really just only have positive things to say. A lot of inspection companies are small or it's a one-man shop. And one of the things that we love so much about Greenworks is you guys are large. And not only are you large, but you cover the majority of the territories that we need in Texas, not just North Texas, but throughout. And so why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what Greenworks is, how many employees you guys have, how many inspectors, and kind of the history of the company.
Okay, Greenworks started out about 10 years ago and just been slowly building on the idea that we were going to try to give more in every inspection for the same price or less than the people around us. And that just started out as a slow slope, and it has grown extensively since then. We've got a downtown Dallas office that has about 6 people in our call center. We've got around 20 inspectors in the DFW area that do different things. You know, that includes home inspections, mold, asbestos, other things that you won't deal with in residential real estate. We also have inspectors in Austin. Right now they're covering the San Antonio area, but we are interviewing for some more inspectors in San Antonio, and then also have some inspectors in Houston that offer pretty much all the services that we offer here in the DFW area. So we're a large company. We've got to the point where we just have to call it Greenworks Inspection Services because we do so many different things. If you looked at one of our cards, the majority of the writing on there is all the different things that we do.
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So let's talk about the different property types that you guys inspect. So for the clients that are buying single family, of course you do that. What about the clients that are looking at multifamily and commercial projects? Is that something that you all service as well?
Yes, we will do those. And sometimes when you go with some of the smaller companies, they'll tell you, yeah, I'll do that inspection. It'll take me about 2 days. A lot of times we will send out multiple inspectors, get that done in a time frame that is usually about the same as a regular inspection. It'll be done in the morning or afternoon in most cases, and you'll still get that inspection report probably a lot sooner than you would get it with a guy who was going to have to compile it all after 2 days of inspecting.
Absolutely. So let's start with the pre-purchase inspection. So someone is looking to buy a property and they hire you all to do the inspection. And what exactly is that inspection and how does that process work?
So for a pre-listing inspection, we're still going to do the full inspection. That is going to include everything that we always give. We always give a zip level. We do a foundation level on there that's usually used by structural engineers. We'll do the wood destroying insect. We will check the entire house, the HVAC system, the electrical, the plumbing, all of that as well. And then we give them a report. And what we're looking, or what the client's looking for in a pre-listing is, hey, I'm going to put it on the market. I want to fix as much stuff as I can, and I don't want any major surprises when I come up. That's why we do a full inspection. It's not just a run through the house kind of thing. It is the same thing that we'll do if your client is buying the house.
So let's flip over to that buyer side. So someone's looking to acquire a property, or they're going under contract on a property and they want to have that home inspected. Talk a little bit about that process and the different add-ons that you offer for those inspections as well.
So one of our key points that we love to be known by is our fast turnaround. If you run into a situation where you've got a short closing date, we can usually get inspectors out there in 24 to 48 hours. And we do next day inspection reports. So if you needed it, if you got an inspection on Thursday, you're going to get it Friday morning 99% of the time. And that inspection is going to include, we walk into the house, we turn on the air conditioner, get it going. We start checking plumbing. Each fixtures. We're in 5 to 10 minutes. The drains, the sinks and bathtubs are all filled up, and we try to drain as many of those at the same time as possible. Because numerous times I've went into houses and ran the water and never saw anything. But I'll fill up sinks and drain 1 or 2 of them at a time, and I'll find a leak at that point. And that's a leak that half the time the homeowners themselves didn't even know they had. So we go through, we check the exterior, we get on every roof. And that's one thing that you'll find out of a lot of other inspection companies is they'll only get on certain roofs, and they'll only get under them on them for certain temperature ranges and stuff like that. Our goal is to get on every single roof at some point.
I'll never forget, you guys did an inspection for me on my personal house, and the owner of the company came out herself with the inspector. And it was, we really don't get a lot of ice and snow here, but it was terrible. And this was a probably 20-foot, 30-foot pitch roof. So it's a big roof. And she got up there and she climbed that whole roof. And I just remember standing in the street watching, thinking, oh my goodness, I cannot believe she's climbing this roof. Because I have inspectors all the time on listings that we sell where buyers hire their own inspectors, and they won't go up there if it's raining, nevertheless, if it's icy. So that is one thing that we've always been impressed with you all for. Now, let's talk about some of the extra services. So you mentioned that you guys do the WDI, or the wood destroying insect. So for those of you that don't know what that means, can you give a little bit of information on what you're looking for there?
So it's part of our inspection. All of our inspectors are trained to do this. As we go through the house, we're looking for signs of previous or active, and what we mean by wood destroying insects is the big one that everyone talks about are termites, but there are other types as well, carpenter ants and other examples. We're looking for that damage that they have either done or are currently doing. And then also, even if we go through and we don't find any of those signs where I don't actually see termites or I don't see damage done to the house, we also look for conducive conditions where if there are termites in the future around your home, these conditions make it more likely that they will come into your home. And we will talk about recommendations for how to deal with those, so you can cut down the chance that you get termites inside the home if they are in your area.
So tell me a little bit about what some conducive conditions might be.
The ones I see on a regular basis are things like when you have a wood fence that is in contact with the side of the home. We all know it's a wood destroying insect if they ever get into your fences and start eating them, which a lot of fences will be in contact with the ground as well. So termites come from underneath the ground. They're subterranean termites is the ones that we see the most often. They start eating on that fence and they have access just to walk into and walk straight off that fence into your house, then that's an easy pass for them to move through. So we usually recommend that those fences be cut back 1 to 2 inches just to give a big enough gap to deter those from coming in. Other things are, foliage that's in contact with the home. So you've got plants that are touching the side of your houses. That's not recommended. And then areas where you've got excessive moisture. They're drawn to moisture as well as the wood.
Okay. Now, one of the other things that really sets you guys apart is your infrared inspection. So can you talk a little bit about what that is, what you do, and what it finds?
So an infrared inspection, the main things that we're looking for when we do an infrared inspection is I'm looking for missing insulation. So before I even get in the attic, if I've done my infrared scan, I can tell you whether the insulation is going to be adequate or if there's low missing areas. So they may have good insulation in a couple of places, but there's several places that it's low or actually missing. So that's energy cost for the homeowner after they buy the house. I'm also looking for wet spots. It picks up moisture that could be behind the wall that I might not be able to see with the naked eye. But it does show up on infrared as a spot that I can pick up. And at that point, if I see that, I can go get a moisture meter and find out how wet it is. Is it something of a concern or something like that? We also as we scan the house, we will go look at electrical outlets, look for overheating wiring, outlets. We look at the breaker box as well to make sure that those are not getting outside the temperature range that we like to see those in. That can show us that there could be some serious issues with your electrical system.
And so when you all are doing a routine, let's use a single family home as an example. What is the extra cost to do the infrared? And then what are you charging for single family inspections?
So the infrared's typically about $75 extra on top of the inspection fee. For OmniKey, we typically will do a $350 inspection with a free infrared on a residential home, below the 4,500 square foot.
So that all-inclusive cost with the WDI and the infrared is about $350.
Yes.
And what about for clients that are buying a property with a pool or other types of systems like a septic system that need to be inspected? Are those things that you can take care of as well?
Yes, we do pretty much all the different accessories, as many as we can do. We do pools. We have numerous guys that are certified to go out and do those. And usually as you're booking, the appointment questions will be asked is, do you have a pool on site, or do you have a septic system, or is it city water and stuff like that? That way we can assign the right guys to come out and take a look at those. And so we do the pools. We also do septic tanks. The only time that we ever have an issue with septic tanks is if there was a certain time frame where most septic tanks do not have access to them. You can't open up the tanks and actually get a look at them. But if it's not in that time frame or not that type of septic system, we're usually able to get it open and get a good idea about what's going on in there.
Perfect. I appreciate you going over that. Now let's talk about the next phase of this. Is there's a lot of things that we see commonly across inspections, and it's so funny. I talk about builders that so many people assume when you buy a new construction home you don't need an inspection, but what I always tell people is, well, no one's lived there to tell you what's wrong, even on the surface. Not to mention, every city has different codes. They're following different years of the building code, and so it's just a great thing to talk about some of the common deficiencies that we're going to see so much on not only new homes, but especially pre-owned homes that are not being checked and haven't had an inspection recently. So tell me a little bit about some of the most common things that you all see on these inspections that are deficient.
I tend to call out cracking in the home. While there may not be a lot of cracks throughout the walls and stuff, there are typically a lot of joint separations, a lot of caulking, missing damaged mortar, things like that. Those are all things that, as long as the foundation's doing what it's supposed to be doing, are more of a cosmetic issue. We do call those out, though they are on the report, so everybody's aware of it. And if the client decides that that's something that they want on their list of stuff to fix, then they'll have a backup coming from a professional inspector report saying these things are wrong inside the house.
So let's look at this example you guys have given. This is a brand new property and looks everything great on the surface, but tell me a little bit about what's wrong with this flower bed.
So anytime you put a flower bed up against a house and you build it up high enough that it is covering the actual siding, there are something at the bottom of every brick wall called weep holes that allows airflow, water to exit the wall system and airflow to get back behind the wall and dry things out. If those are not there, if they're not being working properly or are covered in this situation, it'll do what you're seeing on the screen right now, where it starts rotting out the wood behind the walls. We would all love for the exterior walls to be completely watertight and nothing ever get back there, but there is no wall system that works like that. So we have to account for that.
Okay. And then what about the most common electrical deficiencies?
I see wiring that is will be wired backwards, where I'll have somebody put a ground wire into where the hot wire was supposed to be at an outlet or something like that. I see issues inside the electrical panel itself, where they just wasn't, they'll put too many wires into one breaker, or they'll do some things where they're splicing stuff in areas and covering it up. So the picture on the top right of all those splices that are sticking out of that junction box, it's no good to have wiring spliced in a junction box if it's not actually in there and covered up. The point is to keep those away from things that could cause those splices to come apart, or those are electrocution points where you can, a lot of times you'll have access to actual bare wires where you can get electrocuted. So those should definitely be covered up. When you see the overhead electrical systems, we always look at our weather masts. Sometimes the wiring will be tight and you'll look out and a tree limb will be laying on it. It's supposed to have some slack in there so it doesn't start pulling away from the weather mast. I mean, you don't want to be sitting there at any point and all the electrical go out to your house and there's a live wire laying in your backyard. So we try to watch for things like that. We also look for missing, damaged insulation anywhere on the wiring, whether it's in the attic, whether it's in the actual electrical box, or anywhere that we have access to look at those type of things.
And then for the clients that are buying older properties, is aluminum wiring something that you all are looking for? And is that something that you will notate if it's present in a property?
Yes, aluminum wiring has an issue where it doesn't tend to stay put as well as copper wiring. It expands and contracts a little bit more when it heats and cools down. And the problem that can cause is it can actually pull away from the outlet that it's tied into, which can cause it to start causing arcing inside the wall that can cause fires. Also, where it goes into the main panel, it usually needs to have like an antioxidant grease on there to keep it from rusting and starting to deteriorate, and that can also cause issues as well. So in homes that we suspect that has aluminum wiring is we will do a random sampling. Behind outlets, we will pull a certain amount of outlets within the house throughout different rooms to check and make sure that first off, if it is aluminum wiring or not, and then if we discover that is aluminum wiring, we're looking to see if they have the proper outlets that it should be attached to try to keep it from doing that separation that I was talking about before.
Right. And typically the years that we see that are homes built between 1965 and about 1974. So for those of you that aren't aware of really the history of that, essentially what they started doing was using a different material because it was cheaper during that period of time. And so we don't run into it a lot anymore. There are a few houses that have not been pigtailed, and what pigtailed means is essentially they merge the aluminum in with the copper, because it's where the aluminum hits the fixtures that you have the largest risk. If I remember right, it's like 50 or 55 times the risk of a regular copper wired home. So you do what's called pigtailing, where you pigtail it and splice them together. Or for example, when we do a flip, if we're selling one of our flips and we see aluminum wiring, we just did one and we actually rewired the whole home. So it's just a personal choice. But if you're buying a home with aluminum wiring, it changes your insurance ability. A lot of companies won't insure it even if it's been pigtailed, specifically in multifamily. So all of that said, it's something important to look for. Now, what about on roofs? We all know in Texas we get a lot of hailstorms and thunderstorms, and so roofs are something we're constantly looking at. So what are the most common things that you're seeing in your roof inspections? Because one of the most interesting things that I see is it's not really hail damage that I'm seeing consistently across these inspection reports. It's actually more to do with the roof install itself.
So some of the things, I mean, even on brand new houses, I find things going on with the roof. I mean, there may be a little minor damage or something to the shingles, but some of the things that I find is where they're not lapping the shingles properly, or when they do, they nail them down and they don't cover those nail heads. So in the report, we usually put fasteners, exposed fasteners. The reason we call those out is because it may not cause an issue today, but those nails are going to start rusting. As they do, it starts becoming a point where water can start dripping down. And what I've learned through this whole inspection process is that the small leaks are the ones that get missed the longest, and they tend to cause the most damage. So we're looking for things like that. Sometimes they don't put the roof felting at the edges of the house lapped correctly. and that can cause some issues at your soffits. Then sometimes you'll see where somebody will do an add-on to the house. They'll put a little porch on the back and it'll be a flat roof, but they're using like the same shingles as on the rest of the roof. Well, those type of shingles aren't meant for a flat roof, and that means that the ceiling of that porch is going to rot out over time because it's getting penetration.
And what about plumbing? I can see this picture. This is a pretty obvious one, and it looks so ridiculous you want to laugh, but we see this all the time in homes we're buying. I've seen buckets, I've seen duct tape. I mean, there's so many as seen on TV products that encourage people to fix their own plumbing issues. So what are the most common things aside from the obvious bad homeowner fix that you see from either age, wear and tear, or professional install jobs?
The two biggest ones that I see when it's not an actual leak that they're trying to not fix and cover up, kind of like what you were talking about, is a lot of times they'll do it where there's a weird angle on the piping, so they get a flex pipe. It's called accordion piping, and it allows them to connect it directly without adding any more piping under there. The problem with that accordion piping is it is not a smooth wall pipe, and it means it typically clogs faster. So instead of some hair going down and going through the smooth wall pipe, it's going to catch on those ridges inside there, and then your plumbing just starts backing up a lot more often and a lot sooner. And then some of the transitions where they put PVC piping under a sink, but it used to be a metal piping or something like that, and they'll put a temporary transition sleeve on there, and those are still considered temporary because they do leak a lot more often and a lot sooner. They do deteriorate.
Okay. And then what about water and air infiltration? So this is also one that kind of goes back to that infrared camera, because that infrared camera can catch water leaks that maybe you can't see with the eye. But talk a little bit about what this picture is depicting here and kind of what the causes can be of this and what the long-term loss can be.
Well, the fun part of it is when I go to tell somebody that they need to fix their caulking at their windows, is most of the time they're like, oh, that's just cosmetic. I can fix that in 10 minutes, and they don't worry about it. Well, the implications of not doing it is what you're seeing in the picture, where you do get water that is coming through. You do get air that's coming through. So the point of having a double insulated window is to keep your energy efficiency high so your electrical bills are low. Also, when you get hot air that's mixing with cold air, wherever that happens, you get condensation. So again, you get water inside the house that shouldn't be there, and you start getting wood rot around those sills. Over time, if it's not taken care of, then you start getting rotting of the wood walls underneath there. And at some point, it can get to the point where they're going to have to tear out that portion of the wall and the windows and replace all that wood framing around it. So while it seems like a pretty easy fix, and it is, it's a fix that needs to be done.
This is one of the things we talk about when we do our visits for our walkthroughs is, we'll tell an owner that the weather stripping needs to be replaced or the caulking needs to be done. And I think sometimes owners think this is a cosmetic thing. And sometimes I hear, well, the tenant pays the air bill, so I don't really care if a little air gets in. But I think a lot of people don't realize that if air can get in, so can water. And so it's something that we try to educate our clients, and it's one of the things that we're constantly checking to make sure, because the caulking does dry out. It's hot here, and then you get the heat and the cold and all the wind-driven rain, and it's a natural part of house maintenance. But if you buy a home and it's just been recaulked, and then when the caulk starts to crack and fill, you don't fix it. I think probably the biggest culprit that we see is around garage doors, because nobody wants to have to repaint those garage doors as frequently as they need to be done for the trim around them, because it just gets direct wind-driven rain. It's a big piece of wood, and it's a standalone, so it dries out faster. And so it's one of those things that we love being able to educate people about that, because no, we're not trying to nickel and dime for caulking. We are trying to prevent a much more expensive, costly loss. And when you get into water intrusion and you start getting into mildew or mold, that word we all hate to use, it gets real ugly real fast. So speaking of mildew, let's talk a little bit about attic ventilation, because this is a big one that I see too, especially as all these roofers are trying to make the roofs look prettier with less venting, et cetera. Tell me a little bit about some of the pitfalls that you guys see in the ventilation in these attics and crawl spaces.
Well, as a group of inspectors, we like to have a competition, or dislike to have a competition every summer, where we can see who can record the highest temperature in an attic. Last summer's number was 141 degrees in an attic. So if it's 141 degrees in the attic, imagine what that ceiling is going to be doing. So you're going to have hot air coming into your house, which means you're now spending more money on your AC to keep everything cool, and then it also can cause the condensation that I'm talking about before. Other things is if it's not properly vented, you start getting high humidity. Anything over 60% for a sustained period of time starts causing our favorite word, mold, to start happening in the attic. So those two things are a pretty big deal. The picture that you're seeing, if the clothes dryer is not vented properly, you can get lint buildup in the area, you can get excessive heat, you can start getting to the point where you get what happened there would be a fire. Vent fires are very dangerous. A lot of people don't think to clean their vents out every once in a while, but it has caused lots of fires, especially if it's not ran out of an exterior wall the way it's supposed to be.
Perfect. Now let's talk a little bit more. Let's kind of go over, we talked about the pricing, we talked about what you guys include. I'd like you to go over again what all areas of Texas you all are currently conducting inspections in.
We do the entire DFW and within 100 miles of the DFW area. I've personally been all the way to the Oklahoma border and then farther down that way as well. We do have people in Austin and San Antonio. They cover that area pretty well. I don't know if it's up to the full 100 miles outside of there, but they do cover outside of there as well. And then the Houston area as well.
Perfect. And then let's talk about first what a repair verification is. So I'm a big proponent of these. Those of you that have bought houses with me know this. So we send you out for an inspection, you flag a bunch of issues, you go to the seller or the builder, whoever, to get it fixed. What can you do to go check those repairs? So that is what encompasses a repair verification. So can you talk about what you do at a repair verification inspection and the different price options for that?
I usually, as far as when I'm talking to people as I'm doing their inspection report walkthrough at the end of the inspection, there are certain things that the majority of people aren't going to go back and check. They're not going to crawl on the roof 99% of the time and make sure that it's done the way it's supposed to be done. And then also, most people aren't educated to the point where they would be able to notice the deficiencies up there. So those type of things are the things that we look at on repair verifications, are things that you just can't see and know that they fixed. So we go back and we take a look at them. We'll pull up the original report, all the deficiencies. We will ask you to give us a list of the deficiencies that you want us to go back and check, and we'll go back and amend that original report with whether it's been fixed or whether there's still a deficiency in that area. We have different packages. The package number one is $75 for up to 10 deficiencies. So this is, you only ask for 5 to 10 things to be fixed, and you want to make sure they're all fixed, then you'll go back and look at them. Or you had a big list of things and you're only worried about these 10 things. So we will do that one for 75. Package 2 is a little bit higher. We will also do that. It's a little more expensive if you need us to do it within the 24 to 48 hours, range. So that's a little more expensive because we do have to move our guys' schedules around to be able to get them out there. The package number 3 is $175, and that is, we can check the entire summary page of the report that we give. So every report will have a summary breakdown of all the deficiencies. just to kind of organize it at the end, because we do know that we typically send out a report that has 45 plus pages on average. We don't want to read, you don't have to read that every time, but we do have that summary page breakdown, so you have a good idea what that is, and we will check all of that for the package number 3.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to go over all of this with us. I've put up your contact information here. You all can contact them by phone or by email. I typically order my inspections by email. Now, for the clients that are not here locally and don't want to attend inspections and all of that, how do they go about ordering an inspection from you, and how does getting the report work?
So you can still order it through our office, whether you're going to do it through the website or an email or a phone call. We also do text messages if you're an avid texter. But we'll set up the appointment. The inspector will go out and do the full inspection, and you'll get the report by 10 in the morning, usually through the email that you provide to us at the time of booking the inspection. There is an option where if you have questions on the report, the inspector will give you a call and go through those things with you.
Or of course, if you're local, you can meet the inspector at the house to go over the inspection at the end.
Right.
Well, fantastic. I appreciate you so much being with us today, and for, of course, working with us all these years and our customers. And if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to reach out to them directly, or of course, you can always contact us as well.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so much.